Thank you, Abby. She's passing out some information. But let's go ahead and call the House Transportation Committee to order. Appreciate everybody coming, the audience and the members. At this time, I'd like to ask Representative Mosley if he would give us a report of the Resolutions Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Resolutions Committee met, and we combined a number of these folks so that we would not ask any to go through. Senate Resolution 1028 was combined action. Senate Resolution 873 was combined action. Senate Resolution 1034 was combined a number of things, and I can call them off if I need to. But they have all been checked out as part of the rules of the House Transportation. And we're to receive the new act recommendation.
All right. Thank you, Representative Mosley. Do I hear a motion by the committee? Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. And all opposed, same sign. Thank you, Representative Mosley. We'll have to give Representative Graves just a second to run right back. We may go right into the bill that y'all were just talking about in subcommittee. Senate Bill 431. We're also today, if you'll look in your packet, we're going to look at Senate Bill 150 by Representative Jacobs. Just an update on this Senate Bill 150 until Tom gets back. This bill was introduced last year, and we discussed it in subcommittee. I think this bill made it all the way to rules, and then it just didn't make it through the floor of the House, and it was recommitted. Is that right, Representative Jacobs?
That's right.
Okay. So if you'll take a few minutes and look at that, SB 150, we'll take that up in just a minute. Right now, I'd like to ask you to pull out SB 431. Do we have SB 431, and Representative Graves is walking in the door right now. They just had a subcommittee meeting on this bill, and I may let him present to the full committee what the subcommittee just talked about. Let's see. We have a question from microphone 10, or is that? That's just yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your subcommittee on state highways spent a fair amount of time, I think it was about an hour and 7 minutes, discussing Senate Bill 431, and I think it's safe to say we passed out the House substitute Senate Bill 431 with no recommendation, and would recommend that, I guess, as the subcommittee chairman, there were still a lot of issues to be discussed with it, and it probably needs further discussion as well.
Okay, thank you, Representative Grace. I know we've had, and some of you that were here, we've had some discussion on that. I know we have one other person that just came, Representative Wicks, that would like to make some comments. This bill deals with the public utilities along DOT right-of-ways when they're expanding or widening the road under new contracts. And it's had several meetings in the Senate. I'm pretty sure they had 2 or 3 meetings over in the Senate, in subcommittee and in full committee, before the bill was passed out finally. And so it has been changed a number of times. The subcommittee before us at 1 o'clock heard it for the first time. If you'd like to, Representative Wicks, I promised you I'd let your party speak, so if they'd like to come to the mic and tell us who they are, we'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that. I'll introduce Mr. Glenn Page. He's the Assistant General Director of the Cobb Marietta Water Authority, and they serve about 800,000 citizens with water in our region. Mr. Glenn Page.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I'm speaking today on behalf of my employer, the Cobb Marietta Water Authority, as well as the Georgia Association of Water Professionals, which represents mostly governmentally owned water and wastewater systems throughout the state of Georgia. Both the Water Authority and the GAWP oppose the substitute Senate Bill 431 as it's written because it grants the Department of Transportation the legal right to assess delay costs and damages to governmentally owned utilities. In the 2000 session of the General Assembly, House Bill 1079 amended Section 36-91 of the Georgia Code establishing new bidding and contracting requirements for public works construction projects. Governmentally owned utilities, whether they're city, county, or authority-owned, must abide by this law, which in the case of the Cobb-Marietta Water Authority requires a minimum of 10 weeks to issue a notice to proceed on a project, even on a project that's a relocation project within a DOT project. A bid that's deemed unsatisfactory by an elected or governing board or has a bidding anomaly has to go back to the beginning to re-advertise, and that process starts all over again. That can add easily 5 or 6 more weeks to that process. For those of us who operate drinking water utilities that affect the life and the health and safety of the citizens of Georgia, the inactivation of one of our water lines for relocation work can't always occur as scheduled because of high flows due to drought, because of system operating conditions and having to reroute water throughout our service area, or to work on other improvement projects in the area, sometimes also created by Georgia DOT work. Work plans and schedules submitted to DOT can be affected by work being done by other utilities as well along the same corridor. Oftentimes these conflicts create delays that cannot be predicted at the time of submittal of our plans and work schedules. The notification, planning, and scheduling requirements set by this bill are similar to what already exists in the current permitting process. We currently work in this environment, and governmentally owned utilities are seldom the primary reason for delays on the Georgia DOT projects. Even with the additional requirements for a public contracting process, our track record for working with Georgia DOT contractors to complete projects on time is much better than some of the larger utilities that are regulated by the Public Service Commission. For these reasons, the Water Authority and the Georgia Association of Water Professionals feel that Senate Bill 431 would be bad law for the citizens of Georgia that are served by our governmentally owned water and wastewater systems, potentially increasing our cost of service because of the assessment of damages and delay charges on our utilities. We request that the committee not pass out Senate Bill 431 unless an exemption for the governmentally owned utilities is included. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you coming and testifying before the committee. Anybody on the committee have any questions? Any comment from any of the members of the subcommittee? What's the committee's with? Mr. Chairman, subcommittee chairman, Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Chairman, I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions and concerns, and my recommendation is that we could table it for further discussion, until we can get to some kind of agreement and understand, because we've got DOT concerns, utility concerns, city concerns, county concerns, everybody's concerns. So I think we've got a lot of issues to work out before we can even consider this legislation.
Okay. Mr. Subcommittee Chairman, were you going to make a comment?
I was just going to say that I noticed that the author of the bill had left, and he might not have been aware of the meeting being immediately following the subcommittee meeting. And I think only being fair to him that we follow up with Chairman Rogers' recommendation of suspending through tabling or some other measure.
Maybe instead of tabling, saying postpone, and if we want to take it up, call a meeting after talking to him and take it up. Does that suit the committee? Okay, we got a motion. Do I hear a second? Now, any more discussion? All in favor? Mr. Don? Excuse me, Mr. Ricks. What mic you got there? There you go.
One. Just comment, Mr. Chairman. I feel the DOT's pain, or whoever presented this bill, and I missed the discussion earlier, but I understand that a lot of this has to do with Bell South and their, I won't say resistance, but the fact that they're not as responsive as other utilities, and maybe that's what has caused this bill to be drawn and introduced. I dropped the bill 2 or 3 years ago in Cobb. When we do transportation improvements where roads come in at a fork, and we'll back that road off and bring it into a 90, which improves flow of traffic, it leaves utilities through what now becomes a private piece of property. And not only can you not get them to move it, but, I mean, the time-wise, but there's a huge price or contribution aid to construction to move. So, having said that, I mean, I understand the intent of this bill. I think there was some unintended consequences. We just heard one from our folks at the Cobb Marietta Water Authority. But if there's some way to direct some type of motivation at these utilities that, I mean, we've just seen this merger of AT&T and Bell South, so I don't know if that's going to double the time that it's going to take to get stuff moved or not. But if we need to take this up at a later date and can focus this where it should be focused, I'd be all for trying to do that. So I just want to
Okay, thank you, Representative Wicks. Our normal meeting day is every Wednesday at 3. I may just call a meeting tomorrow at 3, and we'll take this bill up in respect to Chairman Whitehead, Senator Whitehead, and I will notify him as such. But we still have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? Representative Grimes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if the meeting tomorrow, if we'll be able to get all the parties interested to frankly come up with some kind of resolution that has the language that's satisfactory to everybody. I think well-intentioned, good-meaning people, if they got together, could possibly be able to do that in 24 hours, and that's frankly what I'd like to see.
Very good point, Representative Reinders, and I appreciate that. Any other comment? I call the question. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. We will call a meeting tomorrow at 3 o'clock, and I'll let Senator Whitehead know about it. In the meantime, I think that's a good suggestion. If we all could all get together and see what you can come up with, it'd be great. And any committee members y'all want to talk to the people involved, please do so between now and 3 o'clock tomorrow. Okay, let's go to Senate Bill 150. I recognize Representative Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Senate Bill 150 is the streetcar bill. As you'll recall from last session, this bill was passed favorably both out of the Railway Subcommittee and the full committee, but that happened relatively late in the session, and we were not able to get it scheduled for a vote on the floor of the House. The bill essentially would create a flow-through funding receptacle for federal grant funds within the State Road and Tollway Authority for streetcar projects. As you may have heard, there are streetcar projects around specifically the Metro Atlanta area that are being talked about, that are in various stages of development. I think the one that is closest to fruition is the Peachtree Street project that would run from south of downtown Atlanta all the way up through up into Buckhead around the Lenox Mall and Phipps Plaza area. But the purpose of this bill is to create a state-level program that would be a receptacle and a flow-through for federal grant funds. I do want to emphasize that there is a specific provision in here, that is Section 3, that would prohibit the allocation of any state funds or the issuance of any bonds by the state government for these sorts of projects without specific authorization by the General Assembly. I believe that was an amendment by Representative Reinders in full committee last year that was accepted. I would also encourage one additional amendment to the bill, and that is on line 1 of page 2 to strike where it says, comma, is powered by electricity, comma, because it is clear to me from talking with the Peachtree Road streetcar folks, that there is some uncertainty as to how these things might be powered. And so we want to make sure that this is this grant program, this flow-through program, is as open to the possibilities of streetcar projects as possible. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll wrap up, but I would appreciate it if you would call on Senator Zamaripa, who is unless I've covered it all, he throws up his hands and says.
Anytime, Senator, we're willing for you to make a comment if you would right there.
Just thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking a look at the bill. It's passed the Senate twice through both the transportation committees and now here for the second time. And I think had we gotten in here a little earlier last year, it might have been law by now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions, as I did last year, with this bill dealing with development questions and applications, and demonstrates development and redevelopment agreements. And what place does that have in a streetcar bill? On page 2, section 5 and 6, I'm just not following where that's going with it. Line 24 and line 29, all the way through 34.
Let's see. You want to see if the senator can shed some light on that before you go to the next one?
Sure, and then I'll go to the next question.
All right.
The only thing that Representative Jacobs neglected to mention is that essentially the language here parallels the federal language. So really what this thing does is outlines the requirements that the federal government sets forth for making an application. And oftentimes a streetcar project is a part of a redevelopment initiative. For example, in the Peachtree Corridor, it would be written into what's now known as the Peachtree Corridor Plan. So it doesn't happen in isolation. That's really it.
My question, though, is it appropriate to be doing transportation measures that should be cost-effective congestion mitigation problems and working them into some kind of redevelopment project? It doesn't make sense to me that why we're joining these two and putting this language in here that's enticing development when we're supposed to be out after relieving congestion.
Representative, I can only speak to my district, and in the case of the Peachtree Corridor, those redevelopment plans have been in place for some time, and so they're very sizable. There's one going from Centennial Park today. There's another one going from North Avenue to 15th Street. There's one going from now Piedmont all the way north of Lenox Mall. Those are large redevelopment initiatives. Some of them have TADs. Some of them have a designation by the Atlanta Regional Commission for high-impact redevelopment. And so this is simply saying that the trolley would not be initiated absent conforming to that redevelopment plan.
I believe that the bill sets a bad precedent for the state of Georgia, and I'm not going to support it for that measure. However, on another note, the bill also is in Title 32, and I'm wondering why we're doing this under the State Road and Tollway Authority and not under maybe the Georgia Rail Passenger Authority, or even under Title 32, Chapter 9, dealing with mass transit. Why is it under the State Road and Tollway?
Good question. Governor Perdue asked for a memorandum of understanding between the State Road Tollway Authority and DOT on this issue 2 years ago, and the agreement was reached that it would go under this authority. I think it was, I cannot speak to the negotiations, but it was, I believe, originally slated for the State Tollway Authority. Then DOT became involved in negotiation, and I'm not certain how the agreement was reached between the two agencies, but it was vetted. And there is a memorandum of understanding.
Okay, thanks, Senator. Representative Jacobs.
And if I could just springboard off of what Senator Zamaripa said about the development, redevelopment agreements, I mean, the only way these projects are going to happen, I mean, obviously, is with buy-in from the business community. I mean, we've seen the success of that in the Atlanta area. I don't represent the area, the part of Peachtree that that would be included in the streetcar project, although that is right outside my district. But I do represent part of the perimeter center area. As we've seen, when the business community comes together and decides to pool its resources and get behind the TAD, it can be very successful in generating economic development in an area that leads to increased transportation projects that benefit the public, but also tend to drive economic development. And I think that's that sort of thing going hand in hand is something that would be very important for these sorts of projects. I don't think it's a bad policy at all. In fact, I think that what it allows us to do is alleviate congestion while at the same time, ensuring that we do it at little or no direct cost to the taxpayers of the state. And that's why I think it's potentially, there's the potential to do something like this successfully with the provision in Section 3 in there, that there won't be that there may not be, unless there is specific General Assembly authorization for it, state funds allocated for these projects. I mean, that's an absolute necessity, and so I think it's an important component of this bill.
All right, let's see. We've got Mike 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask Mr. Dent a question, if I may. I appreciate Representative Jacobs referencing little or no state tax dollars into it, and if you'd be kind enough to give me that quick first grade schooling on federal funds. If there's a pot of money and we create a new vehicle here for a new revenue stream, does that take away from the original, ever how small it may be, from that original pot of money slated for Georgia, which could, in essence, affect the funding of other projects? That's why I was.
I'm gonna let our treasurer, thinking about money, I'm gonna let him talk about money.
Okay. Earl? Thank you.
The only way it would have an impact is if the money does not come with any obligation authority. So if it's coming out of the transit pool of money that you're talking about, that pot of money, unless it is a special program, a 5309, like New Start program, then it would be using the existing dollars.
So it could be used, and the likelihood is...
Is it a New Start?
I'm sorry?
It's a New Start, he says, and that requires a 50% transit dollars, that comes from new dollars as New Start dollars, and then the 50% has to be a match by the state.
So does that mean that there's 50% of those funds could be funds that would have been used elsewhere?
No, that's all new money that's competitive on a national basis, New Start dollars.
All right. May I continue, Mr. Chairman? Thank you so much. Please understand my perspective unique to the 9th Poorest Congressional District in the United States.
Correct.
When a representative like Mr. Jacobs talk about economic development, we're talking about Atlanta. We only wish we had such economic development. And if that means that we can't get our 133 4-lane from Albany to Moultrie to Valdosta to save our Marine base, then that's important to me.
Correct.
So are you telling me today that if we fund this project and I vote with them, that it won't affect dollars that could go to any other part of the state? Never will. I won't have any effect. We're going to get additional dollars, and there's no way that it takes out of an existing pot of money.
It doesn't come from the pot of money that we already have allocated to us. There's a group of money that's called New Start money that Georgia would compete against all the other states in individual projects, whether it's this project or I'll give you an example, the Lovejoy project. Some of you are familiar with that. And that commuter rail also has a New Start, as well as the BRT on 75-575. That's all based on sheer competition, and it's allocated by the administrator for FTA through a process. So it isn't money that's geared or even designated for Georgia today. It's a competitive issue, and it would have no real bearing on any money we already have or would have, other than other projects in Georgia that would compete for New Start dollars.
Thank you. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, in closing, I would just like to remind my Metro friends that when we come from Southwest Georgia, South Georgia, talk about economic development, you'll be just as receptive. Thank you.
Representative Latimer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 2, line 21, which is paragraph 4 there, the project requires the financial participation of the private owners of real property abutting the streetcar line. I just wonder if somebody could explain. It sounds like that, as I read this, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this, that are we saying that the project will compel private property owners to help pay for this project whether they want to or not, or what is, that's what I'm reading.
Representative, you're right. I wouldn't say it that way, but before a project can qualify for the New Start funds, you've got to meet some or all of these general guidelines. And what the New Start program is looking for are groups that are prepared to invest in the success of the project. So you're absolutely right. And nobody, say, for instance, along the Peachtree corridor, or let's say if you did this in Savannah, along Bull Street, would look at this seriously unless they saw the economic advantage for themselves. So it does require participation, yes.
Who would, if I may, Mr. Chairman, who would, I'm trying to put this in perspective, if, let's say, I owned a piece of property, let's say, on Bull Street in
Right.
Savannah, who is it that's going to come and or ask me to participate or compel me to participate, and
Yeah.
what authority are they going to have if I don't want to participate
Yeah.
and make me?
In the case, I can only speak to the. There's several groups that are currently in organization to look for these funds. The most advanced is in the Peachtree corridor, and there, all the landowners have agreed to participate, and they did so just like they would in creating a tax allocation district. They all have agreed to participate. And by the way, in this case, that work has taken about 4 years. And so you have agreement, you have people signed on. They've already invested in the process. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Latimer. Representative May.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, and Senator, you may answer or you may refer back to the Treasurer, but you made mention of or Earl made mention of a 50-50 split between federal and state funds. Where are the state funds coming from?
I want to correct something on the New Start. The streetcar allocation was a part of the Omnibus Transportation Bill 2 years ago. It was a standalone allocation that falls under New Start, but there is no matching requirement. There is no matching requirement, with the exception of the things that are spelled out in here, which have to do with the tax allocation district or the redevelopment agreements that are outlined.
How much money are we talking about?
You know, I don't remember the exact figure now. This was fresher last year, by the way. But in the case of Atlanta, the city has now picked up the lead on this. It has long since succeeded with the business community. They've all invested in it. They've developed it. There's an agreement on it. Now the city is picking up and they're costing it out. And I think the city's portion is about a third of the overall budget. Mike, you may remember the exact amount. But it's obviously, in the case of, it's multiple millions and millions of dollars. So it's a very sizable amount of money. But it would not be applied for without this provision. I might want to add something else to the committee. We already have a very small law that allows us to apply for these funds. It passed the House 2 years ago. This simply outlines, parallels the federal formula. This gives more clarity with how the federal formula works. That's all this does.
So, if I may, Mr. Chairman, one more question. So, if I'm hearing, then this will be fully funded by the state?
No, this is fully funded by the federal government and the landowners and the city where it takes place.
And the city picks up a third of the cost?
And I think in the case of the Atlanta project, it was a third. And I apologize for not having those details in front of me.
And that's in the form of a tax allocation district?
Tax allocation district and also general allocations from the city.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Gray.
Thanks, Senator.
Sir.
And just to follow up on Representative Loudermilk's question concerning that Section 4, just discussing the financial participation of property owners. I understand that logic. It reminds me of a House bill that I co-authored this year, 1033, that would require those municipalities in the way of a commuter rail line to be in agreement of that as well. With language such as yours, is it safe to say that you'd support the House bill that I co-authored as well?
Absolutely. I think I have a pretty good record with you guys this year. I also serve on Senate Transportation.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative, I've got such a long list here. Representative Davis.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to expand on Representative Loudermilk's comments about the ongoing funding.
Yes.
What is the shortfall from the operation based off of the fares that's going to be, because we all know that mass transit doesn't pay for itself.
Right.
What is going to be the deficit yearly? And are you going to be coming back to the state for yearly deficit funds, or through the TADs and development districts, are you looking at the future tax base at paying for this?
In the case of the Atlanta project, as I said, they spent about 4 years studying it. They've since come up with a preliminary plan that now the City of Atlanta has taken on to look at whether they're going to proceed with it. And I'm sorry I don't have that detail in front of me. I wish I had it. I think it'd be helpful for you. I don't think these landowners, and I'm now talking about the largest pension funds in America, that own everything from 999 Peachtree to the latest building that was built at the corner of 14th Street and Peachtree, which is 1089. These buildings are funded by the largest pension groups in the world. They have all signed off to participate in this. They view it as an asset to the valuation of their property. And so my feeling is there will be a lot of work done before anyone sort of pulls the trigger on any real development with these. This simply allows us to apply for the federal funds should they elect to move forward.
I know there's a lot of people. Just one more question. I saw an article last year when this bill came through in the AJC, and they talked about the overhead power lines, and they showed pictures of back in the 20s and 30s or whatever. Is that the kind of streetcar you were talking about, and are we going to bring back all the little things?
No, Representative, the most recent successful application of this has been in Portland, and that is not powered by overhead lines.
Representative Loudermilk.
Thank you, Senator. I don't mean to.
That's all right.
It seems like I'm picking things apart, but I want to make sure I understand how this applies, especially with the interest we've had in eminent domain recently, and as a proponent of private property rights, I want to make sure that we're not putting some type of something into place that will compel by law property owners to participate in something maybe they don't want to. If this bill passes, this would allow the authority to receive money from the federal government.
Correct.
And then the authority will determine what projects those are given to.
That's correct.
Okay. And that Section 4, the way I read this, is one of the determining factors that the authority will use in determining.
Right. It's a may consider. Right.
All right. Who is putting together or developing the project that applies to the authority? Is that a governmental entity, or is it a developer?
In this case, in the Atlanta case, it's a public-private partnership between the City of Atlanta and a group of Peachtree Corridor landowners.
Okay. So in this, is there only one project that we are aware of?
No, I think there are multiple projects of interest. I think there's one in Beaufort Highway. I think there's been interest in Columbus, interest in Macon, and interest in Savannah. The Peachtree one has been in works for some time. And let me add that the co-chair is Bernie Marcus of this initiative. So these are the developer of the aquarium, chairman of Home Depot, former chairman. So this has been vetted with some of the senior corporate executives in our region.
So if let me ask this question to make sure I understand it properly. Does this bill, if it was in law, give the authority, the Road and Tollway Authority, does it give them the the ability to compel a property owner to participate?
No, my read is that if there's some language we can get to that helps with this, is fine. This is really what they may consider in the event of an application for those funds. But I'm open to language if it makes you more comfortable.
Representative Floyd.
Senator, this language was drawn primarily dealing with the metro city of Atlanta. Is that right? I mean, it might have statewide application, but it's primarily drawn for your project on Peachtree and whatever, right?
It is the earliest project. It's the project that's most likely to move.
That's the only group that has come together to form
that I'm aware of, yes.
Right. Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Also, with regard to the private property owners participating, to answer Representative Loudermilk's question, even though there is right now at the early stage of the planning of the Peachtree Road project buy-in from the business community, ultimately these things are ordinarily done with tax allocation districts. And as you know, tax allocation districts require the approval of the bodies that levy property taxes in that jurisdiction. In the city of Atlanta, that would be 3 bodies. That would be the Atlanta School Board, the Atlanta City Council, and the Fulton County Commission. So ultimately, and we saw this happen with the, I don't know if you've heard of the Beltline project. That's another project where a tax allocation district was approved recently. That TAD went through all 3 of those bodies, and there was a significant, actually, I don't even want to say significant, it was higher than that, level of participation, of public participation at every level of that process before all 3 of those publicly elected bodies and ultimately public officials were accountable for the creation of the tax allocation district.
Representative Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's go back to this line 21 and number 4 again. I have a problem a lot of times with the word exception because, what does it say here? Requires financial participation with the exception of owner-occupied residential properties. Do you feel that they'll benefit?
I do, and I think that the reason this is a may consider under subset D, is that they're basically we're not prepared to put the funding responsibility. Let's say there are actually single-family residences on Peachtree Street.
But I'm generally one of those where I break it down to lowest common denominator. If it's such a good idea, then we all ought to love it and ought to participate. If you're going to mandate it on one person, then I don't know if it's good government to say, but the other person gets a pass. What if one of those non-residential, if you don't mind, what if one of those non-residentials looked at you and says, I don't want to do it?
Well, in this case, there is an exemption for that.
Where's that at?
That's what it says, with the exemption of owner-occupied residential property.
Yeah, but if I wasn't an occupied residential property, and I was a real property abutting the streetcar line, and I don't want to participate.
See, I think that you raised the practical issue, and in the case of the Peachtree Corridor, the agreement has been reached.
But in future cases, because you said this is just the first one, and isn't it true that this could be the model used for other places?
I think that is a good possibility. I agree with that.
And how do we clean this up?
Well, in this case, I think that the protection is that people have to agree, and then they have to go through the process that Representative Jacobs outlined of having the public approval. So if the project, in the case of the Peachtree project, many, many years of study, all the landowners agreed. They wanted to move forward. They've now moved it to the city of Atlanta for the next phase. So I think it's past that hurdle of do the landowners agree. So in a way, I think that is the model. If they didn't agree, then it would not move to the next phase.
I guess, let me ask one question. So if you have 15 property owners along that line and 12 of them want to do it and the others don't, what do you do?
Yeah, I don't think you move forward. I think what they're getting at here is you've got to have that consensus.
Unanimous.
Yeah, that this project is going to have an economic benefit.
Mr. Chairman, can that be put in the bill?
All right, we'll come back to that. We've got a question.
Everybody's making very good points here. Let me ask you, look with me on page 2. You've done a good job. But if you'll start up here at B, and start down the page, all this is almost like a checklist for an application for these funds. The authority may consider the following factors. Is right for development. Application just demonstrates strong and local private sector. This is telling whomever, whatever city, and I know on the front page of the Marietta paper today, there was a headline, streetcars may come to Marietta. So any city that wants to, this is their checklist, and if they don't meet any one of these, it's not going to qualify for the federal funds.
It's written so that in the event there's competition, the state toll road authority can say, well, look, this one has more of the provisions that have been established. It's a better project.
So if they can't meet these, then it's not going to fall.
And these provisions mirror the federal wording. That's where they come from.
Okay, Representative Loudermilk, we're going to put you on a streetcar here in a minute.
And I'm not opposed to the bill at all. I'm just trying to make sure that what we pass out is
sure.
the best it can be. Would you be acceptable? And I understand this is federal language. I don't want to do anything that would contradict or to change the language that would prohibit this from meeting the federal guidelines. I think what would make it palatable and answer all the questions is that on line 21, if we just change the word requires to includes, would that still?
I think that's fine. I mean, I think that they're going to consider, in the event of a competitive bid, they're going to consider all those things. I think it's fine.
And I understand that it might not actually cause a government entity to require someone to participate, that it's just a consideration factor, but I think it might relieve some ambiguity or some concerns that we've had here.
It's a good change.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, at the appropriate time, just remind me, and we'll come back and do that. Now, let's see if we got, Mr. Davis is going to be riding with you.
I'm going to piggyback on that again. Under that section D on page 2, you say that the third word is may consider. It doesn't say shall have. It says may consider.
Correct.
Which I interpret as it could have any of these, it couldn't. So no matter what changes we do in 1 through whatever that is, 1 through 8, it's really not going to make a difference because they don't have to do it anyways.
That's right. These are the broad. I'm going to go back to the original impetus. We wanted to have a policy written and codified in Georgia law that mirrored the federal recommendations. We wanted to do that so we could in turn compete for federal funds, which would then flow to our authority, which would have bids for competition among Macon, Columbus, Atlanta, Savannah, whoever wanted to compete. So that's the only reason we have this language. This language is set up so that we can say to federal funders, when we go apply, look, we've codified this in our code section. We have a governing authority, and here's our code. That's the only reason we're doing this.
I also would like to be recognized for a motion at the public time.
All right, we got 2. Let's see, Representative May.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you're saying this language is exactly
yes,
word for word?
Federal language.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments? We have a request by Representative Loudermilk for an amendment. Would you like to state your amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I move that on page 2, line 21, following the word project, the word requires, that we strike the word requires, and in its place, insert the word includes.
Okay, there's a motion to amend by striking requires and put the word includes. Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, Representative, let Representative Jacobs ask something in this minute. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I also have an amendment, as I discussed, so that we aren't overly restrictive with the definition of streetcar and perhaps to to address one of Representative Davis's concerns. I move that we strike on line 1 of page 2, comma, is powered by electricity, comma. Oh, wait, let me see. Hold on.
That's right.
Right, that's correct. Both commas in.
Okay, and that's in form of a motion. Do I hear a second to that amendment? Okay, there's a second. Any discussion on that amendment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, Representative May.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to amend page 2, line 14, under section D, to change from the authority may to the authority shall.
Okay, that's on line 14. That's a motion. Do I hear a second? We can't discuss it unless we get a second or either it fails. Is there a second? About that same word, your motion. That same word. Yeah, go ahead.
Instead of striking may, you can strike may consider and insert shall have at least 2 of the following.
Okay, we've got a motion, a substitute motion to strike the word may consider and put shall at least consider 2 of the following. Is there a second to that motion?
Did you say we couldn't have any discussion unless someone seconded it?
Unless you have another substitute motion, you can't.
I would dare do that to you, Mr. Chairman.
You made a wise decision. Okay, is there a second to that motion? Hearing none, that motion fails. Now we're back to the original motion. Do we have a second to the original motion? To substitute the word may to shall.
You looking for a second?
Yeah. All right, now discussion on that. Representative Davis.
I might have misworded my substitute motion there, but what I was after was trying to get the consider out, because if may and shall consider, I think are the same, just about the same thing, are they not? They may consider it, they shall consider it. Can I get a... All right. Thank you.
All right. So we've got a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Any other comments? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Reynolds.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to have the author's opinion of a potential amendment on page 2, line 34. Number 7, the project has demonstrated desirable levels of local financial. You've got or linking, and then you also have or both. You know, I really want this to happen because you do have a local skin in the game. So what I'm asking you, would you consider it to be a friendly amendment, as if instead of local financial or linking resources, if we just had and linking resources?
That could be an improvement.
Now, I think we're going to have to, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think that means we're going to have to remove or both. So I guess what I'm doing, sir, is I'm making, Mr. Chairman, an amendment that on line 34, instead of or, we include the word and then on line 33, we're striking or both.
You got to strike a comma too, I think, don't you?
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry, line 35. Yes. On line 34, where it says local financial, strike or, and in its place put and then on line 35, strike the comma or both. That, I think that gives us a little assurance that there is local participation.
Okay, and that's in form of a motion. That we have a second to that. Got a second now. Any discussion on the amendment? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, we've got Representative Davis one more time.
This is the last time, I promise, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for indulging me here. Earlier, you spoke to Representative Graves about House Bill 1033 and the comparison between the two bills.
Yes.
You said that you didn't oppose that. Would you mind if we added that section, it was only a one-page bill, to this bill?
Where does that bill sit now, Representative? Do you know?
It's in my hand. I know what you meant. It did not make crossover day.
Mr. Chairman, I would certainly benefit from the collaboration of this very powerful committee as these two bills make their way through. And if there is some express willingness to work with me, I certainly would want to help you if I could.
I would probably be inclined to support the bill if we could add that text. And the Chairman Smith is the second signer on that bill, so I think.
Well, you didn't mention that, so let's go ahead and have that done.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we.
I don't want anybody to do that because my name's on there. I want you to do it because the bill's right. I just want the committee to know that. So.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, when your name be up, it comes out right.
We got a lot of lights lighting up. Must be something wrong. All right, let's take a couple of questions here. Representative Floyd.
What does the bill, I mean, do we have a copy of it?
Pass out. You got enough copies? That's. Yeah, I don't have a copy either. We'll have Jennifer get us all a copy. Who's the first sign on that bill?
Representative Lunsford, then you, then Graves, then May and Floyd.
You want to talk about it?
That's just wrong power there.
Representative Floyd signed on
It's Lunsford, Smith, Graves, May, and Floyd.
Have you got another comment? Yeah, if you want to read that paragraph, let's go ahead if it's one paragraph.
What we would do is add it on to section 3 and just like make it a 32-10-77.1 and place no streetcar or commuter rail project may be established or operated within or through a county or municipality if such project is to be funded initially or may be funded subsequent to initial service or operation and maintenance costs wholly or partly by fees, assessments, or taxes, levied, or I haven't been on all this time. Taxes are levied or collected within the county or municipality unless such project is approved by a majority of the qualified voters voting in such county or municipality in a special election which shall be called or conducted for that purpose by the election superintendent of such county or municipality.
Any comments?
Simply a referendum.
Oh.
It's a referendum on the initial setup or ongoing fee structure of the system.
It wouldn't be able to be established without the referendum, but you only need the referendum if it requires ongoing funding source from the local taxpayer.
I'm in agreement with that principle, and I think this is what this says as well. My question is would you have to do that every time, for instance, you raised fees? That's what I thought I heard.
No, I don't believe so. Whenever it's established.
Sounds very much like this bill.
Representative Mosley.
I'm not sure you're reading the bill. Suppose a transit passed through the county, didn't stop. What day?
You can't. The bill's intention is to make sure that if you're going to be charged or be required to fund any operation, that you have a referendum. If you're not included in it, then
the transit
could pass through as long as you're not funding it.
without stopping.
Right.
I guess my question would be, we've heard this presentation and some names like Bernie Marcus and City and major pension plans. Now, are we going to add an amendment that would make this have to pass a referendum before it could be implemented? Is that what you're proposing?
Yes, sir.
A referendum of who?
The voters? That would be required to fund it?
Is that the
The
county?
ongoing operation.
Is that the county or just the people that are using the streetcar? Or?
Any taxpayer that lives in a municipality or county that would be required to help fund this project.
Okay, microphone 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I assume most members of the committee are a little bit at a disadvantage since we don't have the bill in front of us. But to Mr. Representative Davis, would that mean if wanted to have commuter rail from Augusta to Atlanta that would pass through my district, and Taliaferro County, which is the smallest county in the state of Georgia, 1,800 people in the county, but the only way to get from Augusta to Atlanta would be to go through Taliaferro County, and if the voters in Taliaferro County turn that down, would that mean commuter rail couldn't go from Augusta to Atlanta? Under your bill that you read to us.
No, sir, it wouldn't. And the reason being, it says if such project is to be funded initially or maybe funded subsequently to initial service for operation or maintenance, wholly or partly by fees collected within that county or municipality. So I know you're at a disadvantage, you can't see it, but...
I'm just asking, it's your bill, I'm asking you a question, if the community, everybody between Atlanta and Augusta approved this under your bill, but Taliaferro County didn't, what would happen to the project?
That actually came up in that discussion of House Bill 1033, and they will not have veto power to stop the rail. It will be able to operate through as long as you don't have a stop and they're requiring funding from you. Now, if you have a stop and you're local funding, you will have to have a referendum.
So,
however, it can go through it without the referendum if you're not funding.
The train could stop, but could go through it, but it just couldn't stop.
Unless you have a referendum, yes, sir.
What are the things that we do exactly? In state or local government, we have local elected representatives up here in the state, and we have county commissioners. I guess I'm having difficulty understanding why you got to have a referendum of everybody involved. What's the idea behind it?
Well, the idea, Representative Chanel, is that unlike a school or a library where you have just an initial outlay and then there's no ongoing funding source or operation cost, then usually mass transit has a large shortfall from its operating fares in it. And I believe that the City of Atlanta was able to vote on MARTA. We vote on SPLOSH projects. We vote on bond referendums. There's lots of referendums. I think it's only fair if you're going to implement a project of this size and source that the voters have their say in it.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can direct this final question to you. The gentleman's bill said it didn't make it in crossover date. Do you know what exact did it ever come out of this committee or not?
It was we had a subcommittee meeting down in room 132, I guess it was.
So it never came out of subcommittee and was never on the general calendar of
never
this committee, much less rules, much less the House. Is that right?
No, it never came out.
Thank you.
Representative Murphy.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just in the process of reviewing the bill. I had a question that Representative Chanel answered a portion of it. I'd like to do the right to come back and make whatever. Very good, Representative Murphy.
I haven't, frankly, I'm not on the subcommittee that would have considered this bill, and so this is the first time that it is before me. As you know, I do also serve on the Judiciary Committee and spend a lot of time with language in that committee, and obviously what we do here is vote on language. I'm not entirely convinced, looking at the language of this bill, I'm sorry, not the underlying bill, but the proposed amendment, that it wouldn't require a vote of the citizens in Taliaferro County if a commuter rail line were to run from Atlanta to Augusta. After all, it does talk about a commuter rail project that would operate through a county, so even if it went straight through Talifer without a stop, that would count, and it would and it would require a vote of folks upon whom taxes are levied and collected within the county or municipality. I mean, that could be our state. I mean, that could be our state tax dollars. That could be our. I mean, there's no clear definitions in the bill as it stands right now. That could be our state tax dollars. That could be our motor fuel taxes. I mean, that could be any kind of tax. So, I mean, you know, if we're going to vote on language, I think ultimately we ought to fine-tune it in committee, and I'm not really sure this language is ready for prime time.
I think, what code section is your bill?
32.913 is where it's at. Only thing that I added to it was Street Farm 4, where it said community rail. And if I could comment on Representative Davis.
I tell you what I'd like to do. I'm signed on to that bill. I'd like that bill just come on out by itself if we want to discuss it in full committee as a bill on its own. This is code section 3210-77. So, I mean, do we want to get real technical, or we just want to agree that we bring that bill to full committee and we can discuss it tomorrow if you want to?
It's passed across over there, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I mean, you're welcome to try it on the floor of the House, but I think we need to go ahead and vote on the Senator's bill and up or down. I don't even know how that vote's going, but I think we need to vote on that. And we've had a lot of discussion on that bill right there in subcommittee, a lot of discussion. So, and, you know, people had time to come there, but we didn't bring it on full committee, so I think we, instead of bogging his bill down, I think we need to discuss his bill, and we can turn around and discuss that bill too, or how do you want to handle it, or you can present that amendment on the floor of the House. I don't think his bill is structured. I won't know how his bill is structured until it gets to rules. That's just my personal opinion, but if you want to make a motion to amend, we can do that too, and we can vote on it.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to contradict you or push my luck here, but you know, if the or through on this amendment is bothering Representative Jacobs, I would be happy to strike or through. Also, his comments about the motor fuel taxes and statewide taxes is very clear toward about the third page, third line from the bottom, where it says "and collected within the county or municipality." It's very clear on that. It doesn't address motor fuel taxes. I would like to stand with the motion and get. We never even got a vote in subcommittee on this bill. I'm not a signer on this bill, but I'm obviously a strong supporter of it. I think it's only right if we're going to do projects of this magnitude that the voters have a say in it.
Well, like I say, I am a signer on that bill. Now, you could take that same language and make an amendment and take all those people's names off and offer your amendment, or you can offer it that way on the floor, or there are a number of ways you can look at it. I'm not going to argue with you. If you want to make a motion to vote on that bill, let's make a motion. We're going to move on, because we've been in here. I've been here 2 hours, subcommittee and this committee, so
yes, sir.
Make a motion right now, or we'll move on.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we add the verbiage of this bill as an amendment to Senate Bill 150 and make it Code Section 32-10-77-1, or .1.
All right, do I hear a second to that motion? Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, we've got a second. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Yeah, the rule on the germaneness of the amendment. He's talking about commuter rail and referendums, and this bill is talking about. It's clearly two different subject matters, as I see it, but I'm asking you as chair of the rule on the germaneness.
I made that comment just a minute ago, I think, about the code section, and I think I'll refer that to legal counsel. Could you help me out, legal counsel?
Ultimately, that is your decision, Mr. Chairman. We are related in the sense that we are transportation modes, but looking like the proposal of the Senator's bill, seems to be strictly related to streetcar projects, whereas the amendment I would provide Mr. Davis
Okay. Any other discussion on that amendment only? Representative Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little sensitive to the representative feeling like maybe he didn't get an opportunity on his bill to the best of his ability, and the senator did say he didn't have any problem with it. I mean, he did say that initially. And with all due respect, and in just strict fairness, I'd like to see us go ahead and vote on it. It'll probably fail. There's no doubt in my mind. All right? But he got a bite at the apple then, and that's why I seconded it to begin with. But I do think the question of you want to send MARTA to my county and my people not have a chance to vote on that? I wouldn't fly in Lee County, probably wouldn't fly in Harris. So I think the premise is a good idea. But I'd like to give the gentleman a bite at the apple.
Okay, thank you, Representative. Any other discussion before we vote? One more time, Ms. Davis.
I just want to be clear that I did add the word streetcar to that language, no streetcar or commuter rail.
Somebody got the light on down there?
I was going to ask if this would refer, would have a referendum for this streetcar dispatch?
Okay. Any other discussion? We got a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay. Right. Huh? I can't hear you.
Representative Wicks. Recognized for motion, appropriate time, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead,
I'd
Representative.
like to move do pass as amended, 150, Senate Bill 150.
Okay, so we have a motion to pass substitute SB 150 as amended in committee. We have a second. Is any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Aye. So pass. Anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Tomorrow at 3 o'clock or upon adjournment.